So let's take a look at why learners sometimes forget and some different reasons for why we might forget. Much information learners encounter is like junk email, not worth keeping or forgetting, and forgetting it enables learners to get rid of needless clutter. But sometimes learners have trouble recalling what they need to do, what they need to remember. Here we're going to look at several possible explanations for why students may forget important information. So let's dive in. So failure to store or consolidate. So for one reason or another, the memory was unable to be formed completely. An example of this is like a common practice of pulling an all-nighter is unlikely to be a productive since a good night's sleep is able to facilitate consolidation. So, after a long studying session, you need time for your brain to sleep. You need time for your brain to rest. This way that the information, in order for you to be retained, we can then go through this process of consolidation in order for us to remember that information at a later time. Another reason is decay. So over time, memories that are unused, that are memories that are not constantly or actively retrieved or encoded over a period of time become harder to remember. So I have a graph here that kind of shows how memory decays over time. So as time increases over time, you can with the lack of repetition, you can see that memory does decay and that things become harder to remember without repetition or retention. So an example of this is like your very first phone number that you ever had. You might have changed your cell phone number 2 or 3 times now, and maybe you only remember like the first 3 numbers of your phone number now because you really haven't had to access that memory structure in a very long time. Another is the unsuccessful long-term memory search. So sometimes there is just not enough cues or triggers that have been used to help remember that particular memory. So students sometimes have retrieval difficulties. They simply can't find something that's actually in their long-term memory. Sometimes they might stumble on the information later while looking for something else. So an example I have is this like Taylor Swift Eras concert, where let's say you went to one of her concerts and you see someone at the concert, but you can't remember who they are or where you met them. They smile at you and they say, "Hi, nice to see you again." And you're like, "Oh, you desperately search your long-term memory structure of like, who are they? Where do I know them? What is their name?" But you've clearly forgotten why you know this person. So this is an example of an unsuccessful long-term memory search. And sometimes, maybe like a week later, you're on Instagram and you see them both post, you see that person post a picture at the Taylor Swift concert. And you're like, "Oh, I know," and you see their name, or maybe you didn't see their name, but then you see that post and you're like, "Oh, I know exactly where they're from." Here's an example of unsuccessful long-term memory search. Also, sometimes there is interference. So sometimes people can easily retrieve things they've learned, but don't know what goes with what. So interference refers to the phenomenon where the presence of certain information or experiences interferes with the retrieval or recall of other information that's in our memories. So it occurs when new or existing information hinders the ability to access previously learned information. So an example of interference could be, let's say I have a picture up there with the Windows and Mac. If you've been using a particular computer software for a long time and then switch to a different program, or a different operating system like Windows or Mac, the new commands and the functions may interfere with your memory for how to use the old program. So I don't know about you, but I actually switch between Windows and Mac every day, maybe like 3 or 4 times a day. And I always screw up the Command C versus the Control C when I make copy and paste because, something is interfering with, what I know. And here's an example of interference. So being able to, retrieve something that I inherently know because it's in my long-term memory, but I'm not making that associative link to map my Command C versus Control C in this manner. The last is reconstruction error, and this is actually very interesting. So reconstruction error is this idea of misremembering, refers to the process by which individuals retrieve and reconstruct meaning or reconstruct memories based on the available information that they have. So memories are not like videos, though, that can be played back with perfect accuracy. Instead, they are reconstructed based on our stored information, personal biases, and other cognitive factors. So during reconstruction, details may be omitted, distorted, or altered, leading to potential errors and accuracies in the recalled information. So example is like, let's say we have a car accident here, and you witness a car accident and later recall the events in an interview. Your memory of the accident may be influenced by various factors that are happening in the environment, such as your attention during the event, your emotional state, and your post-event information, or maybe even trauma or injuries. As a result, your reconstructed memory may contain missing details, inaccuracies, or even false information. Another example is like sometimes, you're hanging out with a group of friends and you're reminiscing on something that you guys have all did together maybe 4 or 5 years ago. Each one of you may have remembered that situation or that fun event very differently. And sometimes it can be a good kind of different, or sometimes it could be a bad kind of different. So we often all exhibit reconstruction error where we misremember certain events because we're not able to retrieve or reconstruct the memories based on the available information that we have. Possible explanations could also be because, it's been 5 years ago, or we're experiencing, post trauma from like the example here with the car accident. You ask 5 different people who are an eyewitness to a car crash or a car accident. Those 5 people might say 5 very different things. And so in summary, all of these explanations of forgetting underscore the importance of instructional strategies presented earlier. We must make sure students are paying attention. We must help students relate the new material to things they already know, so that's their prior knowledge, and give students the opportunity to frequently review, practice, and apply the material.